Akarsh, for inviting me on the show. And it is indeed an honor to be here, to be a part of this.
It's my pleasure.
Saying both is.
Right. So, can you do us a favor and introduce yourself?
Yes, sure. So, hello everyone. I am Swati Solanki. I have done my bachelor's in economics from Sriram College of Commerce. And currently, I am pursuing my master's in economics from Delhi School of Economics. And my interest areas are mainly research and public policy, which is something I delved into more during the last 2 years. For example, I did a lot of internships with various organizations like Kutub Aspiration, Economically, the Research Group, Nestle India, IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, and NITI Aayog, the latest of all. So this was a way for me to gain as much experience and build upon my skills, perspectives, networking, and whatnot. And to be very honest, I started it all at a good pace during the lockdown period, because that was the time when I had mostly nothing to do. There was an abrupt lockdown, and mental pressure was one of the worst next thing, right? So this was a good way to keep me involved in various activities. And apart from these, I have also been involved in college societies and hobbies like reading books, writing articles, and learning new things as much as I can.
I think lockdown was also a good opportunity for a lot of people to explore themselves.
Definitely. And one good thing is also self-reflection. That is one thing that we all did, I believe, during the lockdown.
Can you share your experience in NITI Aayog? What is it? Can you describe what is NITI Aayog?
So my internship at NITI Aayog, it has been one of my dream internships basically. And I always kept wondering if I could be a part of it someday, being a public policy enthusiast and especially having an orientation towards the government sector in terms of career as well. So I would really call it a golden opportunity for myself to be a part of it. And this 3-month internship in the economics and finance division of NITI Aayog, it made me more confident in many things I once doubted or I was unsure about. And especially the days when I worked inside the office, it was really amazing. I interacted with a lot of officials, young professionals, and like-minded people, fellow interns, and sometimes got chances to be a part of official meetings, how things go there. And I worked on a variety of things, including projects, ongoing projects, and individual projects, both, and reports, publications, presentations, etc. So it was an enriching experience indeed to be able to participate directly in the policy making and witness the intricacies or how everything go behind the scenes for an economy at the policy making stage. So that was a good experience. And if I am to brief my experiences and also as a tip to others who want to go in the same line someday or who have a dream internship, not just at NITI Aayog but anywhere else. So that would be that it all depends on how you make the best use of opportunities that you get, how enthusiastic and honest you are about it. So I think if one can figure out that and work in that direction, so I don't think any opportunity is big or small. Learning is all that matters and your perspective towards it.
What is the role of NITI Aayog?
So basically, this is like the backbone of public policy making. So we have different divisions at NITI Aayog, from economics and finance, agriculture, data monitoring, etc., etc. So all of these divisions have their own role in, going ahead with different sectors, different units of the economy, so as to brief the government about the ongoing issues. And there we used made a lot of use of presentations and excels, like charts and ppts, so as to brief the officials about things, and not just brief but also provide solutions to the ongoing problems. So, and I believe that is what policy making is, to point out the issues and address them then.
Right. Okay. So, if we come to the topic of macroeconomics, why do you think it is relevant for the common man?
Yeah. So basically, macroeconomics is the study of the economy as a whole.
Right.
And the economy is comprised, we know, of individual or micro units, which is something we also call microeconomics. So now this individual or micro units, they can be producers, firms, businesses, or consumers. Now, if I talk from the point of a consumer, so I want to know how much it will cost me to buy a particular good or service in the market, or how easy it is for me to find a job, or for example, if I want to buy money, then borrow, how can I borrow, how much will it cost me to borrow. And then if I look from the point of a producer or a firm, I would like to expand my production, produce more and increase my profits. And for that, I have to consider um, how much demand is there for my good. Will the consumers be ultimately buying what I produce? And even if I expand my production, is it, well, I mean, how will the competitors react to my expanded production? Because that is something that will affect prices and supply of the goods in the market. So that is a whole process. And now the point that I'm trying to make here is that if we see, even if we see from the point of consumer or producers, we ultimately make choices regarding our production or consumption, which are based on resources that we have. For example, if as a consumer I have to spend, then I will look at how much income I have, so that I can spend. And if I look from the point of view of a producer, I will look into how much my inputs cost, right? What's the price of my inputs? So all these issues and all these phenomenon of employment, inflation, and national output, that is GDP, what we call. So these are all the things that we address in macroeconomics. And when government prepare budgets, for example, make taxation policies, decide the interest rates in the economy, so this is when they turn to macroeconomics, and you can clearly make out how these policy decisions, they directly affect us as common people.
Right. So basically, taking out a loan, you have to know the interest rate. Doing anything, you need to
Exactly.
figure out the taxation policy and the
Yes, yes.
inflation rate for purchases.
So everything
Okay.
that affects
Right.
us on a micro level, it has a macro impact, because we individuals, we make the economy as a whole.
Hmm.
So the
Can you
policy that
elaborate
we
on that?
decide, yeah. So as I said, as a consumer producer, I have my choices, my decisions, my interest. So I will act upon myself in my own interest. And when different individuals do the same thing, so that is what happens in an economy as an overall thing. So when the
Hmm.
policies are framed at the macro level, at the national level, they affect us all at individual levels. So that is how even microeconomics.
Can it also happen that at micro level, if a lot of things are changed, then at the macro level things will change as well?
Definitely, definitely. That is, I think, what the relation is between microeconomics and macroeconomics it is, right?
Right.
Because a whole is made up of parts, and the
Hmm.
parts is what constitutes the whole. So it's
Hmm.
in like a interlinkage, we can call it, I believe.
How important is the role of bank in the economy of a nation?
I think banks are the backbones of an economy, because we know they're the primary institutions that accept deposits, extend loans, and so as to maintain the overall supply of money in the economy. And a lot of functions we know that banks has, and yeah, they're a very important part of the economy.
Right. So why can't the central bank do one thing and print out more money so that people do not get poor?
Uh, so basically, RBI cannot print as much money as it can. And for example, if the government want the RBI to print more money so as to pay off its debt,
Right.
so that is what we call debt monetization. And it is a tool that provides an opportunity to the government to boost the overall demand at times when the private demand isn't that high and it has fallen, such as we saw during the pandemic it happened. But if the governments do not exit soon enough, this tool also sows the seeds for another crisis. That is what we call inflation. And so let me more delve more into this. So This is because government expenditure using this money printed by the RBI, it raises income and it raises the private demand, the consumption as well in the economy. Now, those who have studied economics, they will know that its impacts to the quantity theory of money. And for those who haven't, basically an increase in the money supply in the economy, it leads to rise in prices. And this persistent rise in prices is what we call inflation. Right. So increase in money supply leads to increase in prices. And this increase in prices we call inflation. Now, on the other side, too little money in the economy, it makes the prices fall. So now a little increase in inflation is always healthy as it encourages the business activity in the economy. Unless there is an increase in economic activity because of this increase in money supply by the RBI, printing more money to pay off the debt, it would make inflation worse, right? Unless the economic activity is not generated. Now, this is something we call too much money chasing too few goods. And since inflation is revealed with a time lag, it is often realized too late before the governance, they have overborrowed, right? So higher inflation and higher government debt, it provides grounds for macroeconomic instability as well.
Right. Okay. Speaking in terms of the debt that a nation has, can you give a little explanation about trade deficit?
Yes. So the trade deficit is basically when the country spends more than it has borrowed, like it has, right? In terms of current account surplus, basically when it has more of imports than of exports. So that is when the trade deficit happens. And sometimes, so as to fund the trade deficit, the governments, they borrow, and for example borrow from RBI, and then the whole process that I just explained. If the government just resorts to the RBI printing more money to pay off the debt, to fund the trade deficits or pay interest for its borrowings. So these are the things that happen.
Aside from printing of money and determining interest rates, what else is the role of RBI?
Yes. So RBI is the central bank. It has a lot of functions. For example, it is the lender of last resort. So when banks fail, and this has happened in a lot of crises, banks have failed. So RBI is one who intervenes so as to maintain the functioning of the economy, of that of the banks. That is the last one who comes to resort them. Then RBI maintains the overall supply in the economy, the money supply in the economy, which is what controls these prices in the economy, that is inflation. So it uses various tools like open market operations and SLR, CRR, the liquidity ratios basically. So it has various tools that it uses to ensure that the economy is properly functioning and it's growing at a good rate. So this is some of the functions of the RBI.
And if we talk about the taxation policy of the government, so how does it determine how much tax should be taken from certain classes of the society?
So taxation in our economy is like we have direct taxes, we have indirect taxes. And for example, for the direct taxes, it depends on the income slabs we have, right? So on the basis of that, we have different tax rates. And yeah, I think that is pretty like for indirect taxes, there have been various reforms like that of GST, simplifying the indirect taxes into much simpler taxes. And I think this is something that constantly requires the government to improve upon, to bring more reforms, because nothing is perfect in this world and everything has its flaws, like pros and cons. So I think.
But how do they determine like that? Like say 34% of the tax rate should be implemented on people. How do they come up with that number?
Yes. So as I said, it depends on the income of an individual. For example, if I have say 50,000 as a salary or less than that, I would not pay taxes because I'm not by the government. I am not.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So and if
Right.
I have between 50,000 to 1 lakh, I pay this much amount, and above that, this much amount. So as we increase the income of the people, the tax rate also increases. right? So that is the system that we follow here.
But is it true that rich people do not pay taxes?
I think taxes are something that we have to pay because that is something legally mandated by the government, and it depends. If I have higher income, we pay higher taxes, and yeah, that is
What
how it
about the loopholes?
that is everywhere. Loopholes are everywhere. So I think I believe that I leave it to the government to decide to address the loopholes, to find out the loopholes, and to make sure that we don't have such, because it definitely affects the economy. Because taxation is something that fetches the revenue, and it is a way for the government to spend more, to spend on the activities like infrastructure, health, education, and everything basically.
Hmm.
So if we have some drainage from the system, some loophole from the system, so that effectively takes away the money from the government to spend on things that
Right.
requires immediate attention.
So if you want to boost the economy of a nation, do you think customs is a good idea for that on imported goods?
Uh, Customs can be a good idea if the government thinks to say protect the domestic industry. For example, these things happen when the government had to protect the handicrafts in the economy, so as to protect the local manufacturers, right? And these things does help when it comes to protecting the domestic producers, but also at the same time I think uh, it is also something that can help boost the competition in the economy to make our industries more competitive. But for that, the government has to ensure that it improves the quality, and it channels proper funding to these industries. It comes to the aid when they need it, right? For example, strengthening the MSMEs, the micro and small medium enterprises. So I think that is what is needed right now.
But like the iPhone is very expensive here compared to say the US or Taiwan. So don't you think it's not fair that it is charging us so much for an item that is literally half the price outside?
It is also a source of revenue for the government, the tariffs. And secondly, um, I think it includes the transportation costs as well, right? When a product comes from abroad to our country. Plus, if we say on the opposite, if we have like lower tariffs for them, it also boosts up the foreign investments into the country. So
Right.
like we have more foreign companies setting up their offices, their industries, their factory units in our economy. So I think the government knows better than me at this point.
Right. And the
Like how
source
much
of revenue for the government should be well spent, right? That's how an economy will grow. Otherwise, if it is in black money, then so
definitely.
could you explain the concept of black money?
Yes, sure. So black money is the money that is acquired through illegal means, basically, or for which the tax is not paid to the government. Right? It causes big losses for the government in the form of taxes, as I mentioned, and this often creates a parallel economy to the main economy, that is the underground economy we call, and consequently it affects the financial system of the economy because everything gets disturbed in that case, the formation of
Hmm.
monetary policy, the money supply basically. And the government has taken basically a lot of reforms and measures to curb the black money, and including like tax reforms, allowing the reporting of black money that is generated through tax evasion, and demonetization that we had in
Demon, yes,
2016. Yes.
right.
And like encouraging digital transactions so as to make things more transparent and so as to keep a track of how much money is there in the economy.
Hmm. Right. So, aside from black money, keeping check in black money, what else steps or how important I would say is rule of law for the free flow of economy?
Can you please elaborate on your question?
Yeah, so basically, if there are no well placed laws kept in place to implement like free production of goods, or that people should pay fair price to goods, or there should be an MRP, then how damaging can it be to the economy?
Yeah. Uh, so that is what the government does. It sets up a system, right? It,
Hmm.
it set up the prices, and so basically our economy now is more of market oriented. That it is depends on the market forces of demand and supply, and that is when like the prices are determined. And the basis of that, we set up like the MRPs, and so this is similar to like taxation. So depending on the our income level, we define the taxation rate, right? So this makes things very simple for the people. Like they have a particular price, they know how much to spend, and that is also how they see their that's how they allocate their income to the various commodities that they want to buy, or goods or services both. And that is something that also determines the wages, the prices, right? Because and sometimes you can even see that we have things like dearness allowances. So when we know that the prices are rising or the inflation is rising, the this is mainly that happens with the government employees, so they do get the dearness allowance. So that is something that they get for the inflation, because things get costlier, and yeah, to count for that basically.
So, yeah, so can you tell how does the economy have a butterfly effect worldwide? Like the war in Ukraine, for example, how is it affecting the gas prices in India?
Yeah. So this is very much related to the globalization that we have. Like after 1991 reforms, India became a globalized economy. So we now trade with the rest of the world. We continuously work upon to improve our ties with other nations, foreign relations basically. And like we have our national policies that are affected by global policies or
Hmm.
happenings around the world, such as that of Russia Ukraine war. And we see that the turmoil in these nations, Russia, Ukraine, right now, it has disrupted the supply chains, right? It created uncertainties across the globe for the businesses, and sanctions affecting the trade uh, globally. And these disruptions and uncertainties across the globe, so they have created price pressures on the commodities. And India, being an importer of crude oil, it faces supply shortages, and as a result, increased prices. Right. So this is the effect that we have of the butterfly effect that we call it. And for reference, I also like co-authored an article recently, few months back, that is the fuel factor in the Indian economy and polity. So it talks about the environment of fuel in India, and how increasing fuel prices, they have been a concern for the common man. And like I can share the link of the same for the viewers.
Yeah, sure, sure. Right. Okay. So, what are your views on cryptocurrency?
Okay, so I think cryptocurrency may be a good investment if one is willing to accept its high risk gamble. But matlab, this could pay off, right? This could be a good payoff if we are
Is
ready
it
to
worth
accept.
the high risk?
I think that depends on an individual,
Right.
because we know how it functions and all. But I think there's also a strong chance on the opposite side that we could lose all our money. So it is a gamble to play, right? And
But
I
if there
think
is no central authority to control cryptocurrency, so
mhm,
isn't it very like uncertain?
it's uncertain, and at the same time it's very lucrative.
Right.
It's both, right? Huh. And as far as the government, Indian government's stance on it from an outright ban on cryptocurrencies in 2016 to an upcoming bill for regulation, I think the government has changed stance on the digital assets. Right, it has considerably changed for the past few years. And like the finance minister's proposal to tax the virtual assets at 30%. I
Hmm.
mean, this has also sparked a lot of debate whether, questions over the legality of the cryptocurrencies in India. Is it legal? Is it not legal? And while many has welcomed this decision, thinking that probably this is the first step that um, the virtual currencies are being recognized by the government,
Hmm.
like they are taxed, but the government is not yet the government has not yet clarified whether they can be considered as legal tender in India.
If I invest in, say, Bitcoin, can the owner of Bitcoin run away with all my money?
It can possibly happen.
It can.
That is what I said.
Yeah.
There are risks, and if you are like pretty much someone who is risk loving, you
Hmm.
will probably invest in that. And if you are risk averse, not favoring the risk, you won't.
Money loving.
Money loving,
Right.
definitely.
Right. So, when did demonetization happen? Was it 2019?
2016 it was.
68.
Yeah.
It's 22, right? So it's been like what, 6 years. So during the 6 years, what all changes do you think, statistically significant changes that have happened because of it?
Yes. So the goal or the basic objective of the demonetization was to, absorb all the black money from the economy, to just close those loopholes that are there, people who are
Right.
evading taxes and everything. And now, 5 years or 6 years after the demonetization, I think it wasn't as successful as it was thought, because we all know how sudden it was, and there was lack of preparedness on the part of the authorities as well. We had long queues, and how much people had suffered at that time. And now, if we see years after demonetization, there is one good prospect about it, that the digital payments, they have risen, right? They have risen a lot, and that is something on the positive side. And at the same time, the cash with the public is still high. The currency that we hold is still high, and it seems likely that even if the GDP recovers, right, the currency with the public, it might not go down meaningfully, because the cash culture that we have, money having in our hands, it still dominates for the vast informal sector, right? A lot of people don't use digital transactions like those in the rural economy. So we still have a lot to achieve on that front.
But did it curb its main objective, like extracting black money?
I don't really think so. That is what I said, because what if we believed it would succeed in, it might have for some, at some level, but not fully.
Right. How
Yeah.
much how much investment do you think we should make in our healthcare and education? Like what percentage of our GDP should be spent there?
I think this is something we can call the backbone, if we call
Hmm.
it in terms of investment, because when you are more educated, when you are more sound with body and mind, more
Basically,
healthy,
more productive.
exactly, you become more
Right.
productive. You make better decisions. You contribute to
Hmm.
the economy in a better way, right? So this is why I believe these are one of the sectors that required good attention, and these are the indicators we fail the most at. This is the reason why India have not performed better as compared to its Asian counterparts, and probably worse than Pakistan or China, whichever
Hmm.
you see. And as far as the percentage goes, I believe, so like, I might not be really sure about the numbers, but definitely we require a lot to be
Hmm.
done in these sectors, right?
But
And this
do
is
you
something that
think?
the pandemic.
Yeah. Go ahead.
This is something that the pandemic has taught us, right? Where
Right.
how we failed in these and what all we need to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think like China's dictatorship is like helpful in its rise in economy? That they have a strict policy for everything. I think North Korea also has banned laughing.
Yeah.
Have you heard?
Hear such
Sorry,
things.
I
Yes,
should.
that's
Yeah.
true.
So, do you think that dictatorship has a a role to play in strict implementation of policies that makes countries like China so successful?
Well, it's not just like we see dictatorship making China powerful, as you said, but we also see one child policy that China had and how now it's paying the consequences. It has a lot of aging population, and matlab, I really feel that democracy is not good. We know it. We have dictatorship is not good. Democracy is the best. Like you have the freedom to do what you are doing. Like we are having this podcast, we might not be having it if we are in China, right? We
Right.
might not be able to criticize the government like we do. So we have that freedom, and when you control everything, see, if someone controls you, you might not be at your full potential,
Hmm.
right? But if we are in a democracy, or say we are more market oriented, we make decisions regarding the more like what market decides for us, what's the best for everyone, not just for one person and one party what it wishes, right? So I think that's the best for all. And it's not so dictatorship is not a way to make the economy perform better. Rather, we have to look at what it is that is ailing in the economy and rather address those issues, right? Well, we have the revenues, you fund them accordingly, you redirect those in a proper way, right? You make sure there's no black money in the economy, there are no loopholes, right? Where you want to reach the say funds or subsidies or whatever you want it to reach to the people, you make sure it reaches to the people. And I don't think dictatorship is necessary for that. It can
But
be
don't
well
you think
done
like
with democracy.
mandating education for everyone is like things like that? They are helpful for the economy.
I think giving people the choice is a better option
Let's
rather
assume
than
people are stupid,
not everyone is stupid, I think. Because
right?
when you are educated, you don't I don't think you remain stupid, right?
Right.
When you
Okay.
learn, you know what's good for you, what's not good for you. I think that's how we progress. And I think education is the most basic of all. Because once you are educated, you know what all you have, what more can you have, what good can you do to yourself, to your family, to your nation, etc. etc. So
Hmm.
you become self-aware, you have a perspective and everything, right?
Right. Last question I would like to ask you: do you think India has a chance of becoming a superpower?
I think India has a lot of things. I mean, good points that it can become a superpower, and I do believe in this vision. Like we have the world's best resources, both natural and human, and we have large youth as well, and democracy above all. And this is possible, like for India to become a superpower, given we address all the crippling issues that we discussed, like related to infrastructure improvement or boosting the manufacturing sector, betterment of health and education, and following transparent and effective governance with a clear demarcation of power, right? That
Right.
is something also very important. And these are to name a few. And lastly, acknowledging the bottlenecks that we have in the economy, the loopholes that we have in the
Hmm.
economy, and constantly working upon them should be the way forward.
Do you have any tips for those who are aspiring to study economics?
Yeah, sure. So do you want me to address like in a particular way?
Any
Like what?
any way you like.
Okay, so there's one thing I have learned for economics, that it is not what we studied in class 11th or 12th, the basic economics that we had, but it does get more mathematical with time. And it is very lovely subject, a very beautiful subject if one is quite interested in it. But I think we have to make, like, a lot of students or people, they fear that is it sensible to do masters in economics after bachelors
Hmm.
in economics, because we have seen how difficult it gets and this and that. But I think if once you have some interest for the subject, if you you have to work hard wherever you go. That is one thing that you have to do.
Definitely.
So I think one can decide this with a open conscious mind, but
What are
it's a
the
long.
scopes? What are the scopes that are available?
So like, I for myself, I can see that I can I can have placements from my college, right? So corporate sector I have, government sector I have, like we have various exams like that of RBI grade B, we have Indian Economic Services and Indian Administrative Services, then we have various opportunities from banks and SEBI, and a lot of opportunities, teaching opportunities we also have.
Right.
For that we have to give the NET exam. So I think in whichever field you go, we have ample of opportunities. It is just upon us how to identify those opportunities and make the best use of them, to strategize our energy towards it, and we can do what we want. Right?
Right.
Just that determination is required.
Right. Thank you, Swati. You have been very informative. Let me just pause the recording.
Thank you, Akash. Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure was mine.